I have another case history of sorts, and I'm very familiar with this one. Fortunately for me, Linus Pauling wrote Vitamin C, the Common Cold and the Flu in 1976, just in time for me. My son was born the following year. For that, I thank Dr. Pauling. And we followed his advice. People have criticized Linus Pauling, but I always tell my students that, you know, the funny thing about Pauling's critics is that they seem to have 2 fewer Nobel Prizes than Linus did. Pauling actually said this. This is not a paraphrase. He said, every drug should have this label. Keep this medicine out of the reach of everyone. Use vitamin C instead. I think that's just marvelous, don't you? So I took it literally. I raised my children all the way into college. They never had a single dose of any antibiotic, not once, not ever. No antiviral, not once, not ever. Some people think I was lucky. I believe parenthood involves a certain amount of luck, but I think those of us that are parents can tell you that it's, like Thomas Edison said, it's 95% perspiration. Of course, my children took their age in grams of vitamin C every day. That's quite a lot. 1-year-old child, 1,000 milligrams. 9-year-old child, 9,000 milligrams. That's what we did, because Dr. Cathcart and Dr. Pauling seemed to know what they were talking about, and I couldn't find better sources than them. So my father used to say, if you really want to know something, go to the organ grinder, not the monkey. So there it is. By age 10, they're taking 10,000 milligrams of C a day. I'm not making this up, and neither were Dr. Pauling or Dr. Cathcart. They were getting it from Frederick Robert Quenner of Reidsville, North Carolina, a name that keeps coming up, and for good reason. We owe Dr. Quenner a lot. When my kids were sick, they followed Dr. Cathcart's advice, and they took oral vitamin C to saturation, which is indicated by bowel tolerance. Now, when I speak to students, when I speak to the public, I tell them that bowel tolerance means exactly what you think it means. When Abram Hoffer would have children as patients, he'd want them to improve their diet. If they had ADHD, they needed to. So the child would be sitting there, and Abram would lean over and say to the child, "No junk." Abram said every child knew exactly what he meant. Well, that was easy. Doctors say they only have 5 or 6 or 8 minutes for a visit. No junk, 2 words. Some jokes are so good you can't wait for the slide. Dr. Hoffer also said this, and I think it's a really good lesson for everyone who has a doctor, is a doctor, or knows a doctor, or is interested in just plain good medicine. Where are the good old days, said Abram, when honest physicians honestly reported what they saw in language that any doctor could understand? This idea is not new. Using high doses of vitamin C has been going on for decades, and it is probably the most unacknowledged successful research in medicine. Literally, decades of physicians' reports and controlled studies do support the use of very large doses of ascorbate. Effective doses are high doses, often 1,000 times the US RDA. Get out your calculator and run it by, because the RDA is under 100 milligrams, and that includes a smoker. You might say, well, that's standard. Well, so is minimum wage. You might get by on it, but just barely. And as a parent, I would say just try raising a family on it. Who in their right mind would want to get by with minimum wage, and who in their right mind would want to get by with 100 milligrams or less of vitamin C? Now, it is a cornerstone of medical science that dose affects treatment outcome. This is obvious to everyone who knows of, researches in, or sells for the pharmaceutical industry. Abrams said to me once, you should write a paper on what happens if you treat a bacterial disease with 500 units of an antibiotic. Now, I used to milk cows many years ago, part of my sordid history that makes me such an engaging speaker. And I personally administered antibiotics to cows with mastitis. It was part of the job. At that time, we'd give them 1 million units, which is kind of a lot in 1978. Sometimes 2 million units. And sometimes those cows did not survive. No veterinarian would have said to me, well, since you only gave 500 units, that's okay. We always gave the right amount, and even that high amount didn't work. So with vitamins, how do we expect 500 milligrams of vitamin C in a study to have anything to do with acute hepatitis when we know from Dr. Cathcart's papers that it takes tens of thousands of milligrams and possibly over 100,000 milligrams a day? Most vitamin C research has used low doses, inadequate doses, and obviously these experiments are being set up to fail. Low doses do not get clinical results. That's all there is to it. Can I get some water? Now let's talk about the tolerable upper intake, or UL. For vitamin C, it is a somewhat funny 2,000 milligrams a day. And what's really interesting is how quickly that tolerable upper intake is sort of converted in the minds of the public into upper limit. Now, this level is set by the Food and Nutrition Board at the Institute of Medicine of the National Academies. The National Academies used to be called the National Academy of Sciences. I bet you've been to a lot of conferences and nobody ever used the phrase oxymoronic laughter before. Investigators using vitamin C in high doses have consistently reported excellent results. You've been hearing from them today, you'll be hearing from them tonight, you'll be hearing from them tomorrow, you'll be hearing from them the next day, and you'll be hearing from them from now on, because the paper trail is not going to go away. And it hasn't gone away. It's just been ignored. We're talking 80 years now that vitamin C studies have been marginalized, if not vilified. High doses were, in fact, advocated right away. Signorgi, who is credited with having isolated ascorbic acid and would later receive a Nobel Prize for ascorbate-related work in 1937, talked about taking fairly large doses immediately, I think around 1,000 milligrams. Now, here are some early pioneers of high-dose vitamin C therapy. We know Dr. Klenner pretty well, but the other two are interesting and deserve special attention. And then we have two modern champions. I think we both recognize those names, too. Let's go back to Klaus Washington Jungblut, a physician who was professor of bacteriology. He was full professor, by the way, at Columbia College of Physicians and Surgeons in New York. Good school. He was a well-known and acknowledged pioneer in the field of polio therapy, and he advocated vitamin C as an antiviral and an antitoxin. When you take a look at Jungblut's work, it gets interesting real fast. He saw vitamin C as an antiviral. He saw vitamin C as prevention and also a treatment for polio, and he published on this in 1935. And there is that seminal paper. That has pretty much been ignored. I had a student at a university who came up to me and said, "This is very interesting. I'd like to do a paper on vitamin C and polio and tease out all of Youngblood's work and any related work." And I said to her, "Well, you know, you're going to get some opposition in the department for this, so you better do a good job." I said, I think you can probably find around 15 good papers, and you should be able to make an interesting case for it. Well, she did a real good job, and the department chairman said to me once, he described this student as a dial tone, literally, because she had lighted on this particular topic. A remarkably narrow-minded, unscientific, and I think politically incorrect way to describe any student who is looking at literature and thinking for themselves. And this is what you find if you look for Youngblood. All of this before Pearl Harbor. What's especially noteworthy here is that at this time we had a president in the United States who had polio. You would think that somebody would have connected the dots. Time magazine did a study on September 18, 1939, reporting that Youngblood studied the 1938 Australian polio epidemic and said that low vitamin C status was associated with the disease. Fast forward to a wonderful physician, a Greek physician living in Australia, Archie Kournikos, remember him? And his wonderful book, Every Second Child. Vitamin C has never caused polio, unlike the live oral vaccine, which has. Now, I'm very happy that Dr. Sabin invented the oral vaccine, because when I was a little boy, they marched me down the hall of the nurse's office for polio vaccination. I was terrified they were going to stick that darn needle in me. And we got there, and they gave me a sugar cube. And I thought, this is to keep me quiet while they stabbed me with the needle. But they let me go. Eat this. And I left. So Dr. Sabin, I have no argument with him as a compassionate doctor. But the fact of the matter is that the oral polio vaccine, according to certain authorities, one of them, Dr. Jonas Salk, remember him? Dr. Salk said that since 1960, the oral polio vaccine was the sole cause of polio in the United States. Salk and Sabin did not get along. Whatever happened to vitamin C therapy for polio? What happened? What happened to Dr. Youngblood? Why didn't anybody follow this up? Youngblood actually used very low doses. Sabin went in there and replicated it. But he used even lower doses. Now, I've told many an undergraduate that that does not constitute a replication. If I have to pay, say, $80,000 for, say, a sports car, and you go and you get that same sports car for $7,000, something is wrong. Either I overpaid or you're buying a hot vehicle. So we're not really replicating. The circumstances are not the same. And yet Sabin's work has been taken as basically the benchmark, very quietly, insidiously, in fact. But even with the low doses he used with monkeys, Youngblood made the correct conclusion, and here it is. Remember, this is before 1940. So here's some of those references, which are, of course, on your copy of the presentation. 22 of Youngblood's research reports were published in the Journal of Experimental Medicine, and I'm happy to say you can get that access online free of charge, full text. Very interesting reading. I put together a biography and a bibliography of Dr. Youngblood, and here are the links for that. The Journal of Orthomolecular Medicine published that some years ago. Now we have Dr. William J. McCormick, Toronto, Canada, practicing physician, and he would use vitamin C as antiviral and antibiotic. And he also was one of the very first to point out that ascorbate deficit causes cardiovascular disease, he gave injections of gram-sized doses, around 1,000 milligrams, maybe just a little more. At the time, a lot. 60 years ago or more, McCormick saw that vitamin C deficiency was, in fact, the essential cause of and effective cure for numerous communicable diseases. He's one of the very first to advocate injections. And there's one of his papers in Medical Record in 1947. This is right about the time the sound barrier was first broken. McCormick boldly stated, and correctly, that vitamin C does not cause kidney stone. In fact, McCormick treated kidney stones with vitamin C in 1946. I consider the kidney stone caused by vitamin C to be the Loch Ness monster of medicine. Everyone knows what it is, but no one's been able to bring one in yet. Very similar comment to Dr. Youngblood. Vitamin C is a specific antagonist of chemical and bacterial toxins. McCormick also was interested in the fact that 4 out of 5 coronary cases in hospital, in his experience, showed vitamin C deficiency. Vitamin C, of course, is going to strengthen collagen. Blood vessels contain collagen. Without enough vitamin C, these blood vessels get weak, said Dr. McCormick, and the artery can literally bleed into itself. Naturally, the body can't have that, forms a clot, and a clot on the inside of an artery is not a particularly good idea. Vitamin C strengthens the arterial wall, preventing this process from beginning. McCormick also found, when doctors were still advertising cigarettes, and this is an exact quote, in clinical and laboratory research, he found that the smoking, quote, of 1 cigarette neutralizes in the body approximately 25 milligrams of ascorbic acid, end quote. And that's how cigarettes are involved in causing cardiovascular disease. One of the ways is that it weakens the collagen, and you can't afford to have weak collagen in your blood vessels. 3 decades later, Linus Pauling and Matthias Rasch would go on to demonstrate how vitamin C was actually a solution to cardiovascular disease. Here are 2 of their papers, both from the Journal of Orthomolecular Medicine, 1991 and 1992. A review of Dr. McCormick's life and work and his bibliography is at this link here. Then there's Dr. Quenner. In North Carolina, Reidsville, North Carolina, small town. Although he was in general practice, Quenner was in fact a board-certified chest physician. He was a graduate of the Duke University School of Medicine. And vitamin C was used by Dr. Quenner as an antibiotic, an antiviral, and an antitoxin. And he was pretty much the first to give really high doses, really large injections of vitamin C. And there's the number. Quenner treated patients with injections of vitamin C ranging from approximately 350 to 1,200 milligrams of vitamin C per kilogram per body weight per day. Working that out to the average adult, it's somewhere between 20 and 35,000 milligrams a day for the lower amount. And a very Robert Cathcart-like 70 to 120,000 milligrams a day for an adult. Quenner was successful. He treated polio, pneumonia, and other serious infectious diseases, and was largely ignored. He also showed up just what a big public relations problem vitamin C has. It's too good for too many things. There's some of the things. A critic can look at that and say, oh, wait a minute. And yet we know in the human body that there's really not that many nutrients, and there's a whole lot of chemical reactions. And it's common for a vitamin, or a coenzyme like a vitamin, to be involved in dozens or even hundreds of things. That's the way the body works. So I would suggest that the reason one vitamin can seem to cure so many things is because a deficiency of one vitamin can cause so many things. Interestingly, Quenner also could stop and even reverse multiple sclerosis. This protocol, which was published by the Townsend Letter, with their kind permission, is available at dryourself.com and also at the Townsend website here. This is a lengthy and detailed plan where Quenner sets out all the vitamins he used and the amounts he used. And if you remember Dr. Lyndon Smith, who is nationally known as the children's doctor, he actually won Emmy Awards, something that Linus Pauling didn't even manage. Smith was on The Tonight Show 60 times or something like that. Popular man in his day. Dr. Quenner's work was summarized by Lyndon Smith in Clinical Guide to the Use of Vitamin C. That is a free text paper you can find on the internet with a simple search for it. This is one location. My review of Quenner's life and a list of his publications is at dryourself.com and at the Journal of Orthomolecular Medicine website. Dr. Cathcart, mentioned him already. Cathcart had been doing this for a long time, starting in the 1960s, and he got spectacular results using very high doses of vitamin C. When Cathcart was asked how much to give, he also did not answer, but he gave estimates. And one of the ways he would describe illness was by the amount of vitamin C it took to cure it. So he would talk of the 100,000 milligram cold. That was his way of terming it. Makes a lot of sense. Take a minute to read this one over. I've been consulted by many researchers, said Cathcart, who propose bold studies of the effects of massive doses of ascorbate. Every time the University Center, the Ethics Committee, the Pharmacy Committee, or whatever, deny permission for the use of massive doses of ascorbate and render the study almost useless. Seasoned researchers, depending upon government grants, do not even try to study adequate doses. One of the most amusing aspects of this research are the speculations and research into the toxicity and other adverse reactions of tiny doses of ascorbate, when many have used for years 20 to 100 times the amount being discussed. If there's one paper you want to read by Dr. Cathcart, this is it, in Medical Hypotheses in 1981, Vitamin C, Titration to Bowel Tolerance, etc. And here's two more. Note the dates, 1984, 1985. Have you ever seen a newspaper article about Dr. Cathcart? There's a list of his publications. He didn't publish a lot. That's why his papers are so especially important. And then we have Dr. Reardon, our beloved author of Medical Mavericks, volumes 1 through 3. And you're here because you obviously know that Dr. Reardon and his colleagues have and continue to offer tremendous leadership to the world on the use of IVC and other modalities. And this conference gives you an idea to look around and see that firsthand. This is my first visit to the clinic, and I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to be with you today. Since 2008 at least, the National Institutes of Health has even shown some interest in high-dose vitamin C as chemotherapy against cancer. But it was 62 years ago that Dr. William J. McCormick noted that persons with cancer are vitamin C deficient, and he actually measured it. They needed about 4,500 milligrams to get to neutral, to bring them up to just past scurvy. Interesting that it was published in the Archives of Pediatrics. I have a feeling that paper was hard to get published at all. And if you look at what's printed today, you might come to the conclusion that this is promising, but quite unproven. My father's favorite old-time expression was, "We get too soon old and too late smart." So the medical literature has ignored 8 decades of high-dose vitamin C work. Tens of thousands of milligrams of vitamin C is perhaps the most unacknowledged successful research in medicine. But it's time to be forward-looking. Just because it was ignored doesn't mean it's going to be ignored anymore. And every time you put forward a paper, a comment, a letter, treat a patient, do research, whatever it is you're doing, you are bringing forward an idea whose time had come a long time ago. And we're here, right now, with that opportunity right in front of us. Each person in this room, each person that you talk to. There are those who would question the sanity of people who use high doses of vitamin C and advocate it for so many different things in such huge doses. But as Oliver Stone, famous film director, said, all of that is just to stop you from having the discussion at all. It's much more fun to hear what someone has to say. The U.S. Army put it in brief terms. And there are other ways of saying it. In Toronto some years ago, the conference, the Nutritional Medicine Today conference, was just wrapping up. Everybody was standing up, putting on their coats, and Dr. Reardon came up and said to Stephen Carter at the podium that he'd like to say something. And Stephen Carter said, would everybody please just hang on a minute and sit down? Dr. Reardon has something to say. And Hugh got there, and I had just met Hugh at that point. And he was a very dignified and imposing-looking person on a podium. And he got up there looking like the very epitome of scholarship. And he bent over the microphone, and he said, the room went wild. Most of us are already familiar with the Journal of Orthomolecular Medicine. The archive is almost entirely online. It's free access and searchable. And you may not know about the Orthomolecular Medicine News Service. Hugh and I talked about this many years ago. Hugh wanted to make orthomolecular a household word. That's the very phrase he used with me. And he liked the idea of having a news service to put forward the positive approach to healing using nutrition, high doses of nutrients, and orthomolecular medicine in general. So the Orthomolecular Medicine News Service was founded, I don't know, 13 years ago or so. It's non-commercial, it's peer-reviewed, and subscriptions are free. You can go to my website, dryourself.com, or you can go to orthomolecular.org and sign up for this press release feed. We've done about 200 of these releases over the years. The archive is posted and also free, and I'd like to point out that as editor of the publication, I welcome submissions. If you have something you'd like to write about, I'd like to read it. So if you have an idea, if you have something that you've experienced in your practice or research that you've done or something that you found in your own personal life, we publish reviews, editorials, commentaries on the news. Maybe you've seen something on the news and you'd like to make a rebuttal to it. This is the type of thing that we also publish. You can contact me through my website, which is dryourself.com. If you come to see the movie tonight, you're going to get more of me than you can stand, I expect. The movie is called That Vitamin Movie, and it's just an awful lot of fun. It's the world's first feature film about high-dose vitamin therapy. And the beauty of it is we've got 20 experts in it, and many of those experts are at this conference, so you get to see them on the screen, point to them and go, ha, 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 ha. It's a lot of fun. So if you haven't signed up for that, we'll have a panel discussion at the end. Over 1 million views of That Vitamin Movie so far. We have time for a question or two?
How long have you been doing Doctor Yourself now?
The Doctor Yourself website has been up since 1999. Doctor Yourself is designed for the layperson. It's searchable, it's peer-reviewed, it's non-commercial except it does list my books, but it doesn't sell them. It's been very well received. We've gotten a lot of attention over the years, and I'm delighted to say that it has made the list of Quackwatch's non-recommended websites.